Welcome to Talent Experience Live, your weekly look at all of the hot topics in HR.
People are 28% more productive when they use vacation time.
Involving themselves very deeply in diversity and inclusion efforts.
Ramping up college recruiting and career fairs.
Artificial intelligence helped automate certain tasks.
50% more applications. How do you make your company culture still stand out?
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome everyone to another episode of Talent Experience Live, your weekly look at the hot topics in HRs, interviews with leaders in the industry, as well as our favorite new HR tech. Today we'll be covering everything you need to know in recruitment, talent acquisition, talent management. And as always, please follow us on your favorite social channel, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We are broadcasting live from all of those platforms. So please feel free to chime into the chat, ask any questions, comments, something that has been on your mind, who you think is going to win the Super Bowl this year. The NFL kicks off. So whatever you want to talk about, please sound off in the chat. And of course, I am joined today by my lovely co-host, Natalie McKnight. Natalie, how are you? And what are we talking about today?
I'm good, Devin. And today, another topic that I'm really excited about is building and engaging your talent community. And this is a really exciting topic, and I think topical as well. So according to the Society of Human Resources, any company with more than 1,000 employees is spending over $4,000 per hire. And in a normal year, these companies generally hire around 550 employees per year, which totals to about $2.4 million spent just on recruiting. So with companies looking to save time and money in the recruiting process during the pandemic, while still hiring that top talent, it raises the question of how are we going to do this? And the answer is talent communities, right? Building up those people and those contacts and nurturing them through your talent community.
So we're not talking about the New York Jets today. That's what you're telling me.
Not today.
Somebody told me a lie. No, that's an amazing topic, and I am excited for our guest. Today we have Randy Goldberg, VP of Talent Acquisition Strategy at MGM Resorts International. Randy, welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for having me, Devin and Natalie. Excited to be chatting with you guys. And if you want to talk about football, we could definitely talk about the Raiders in Las Vegas if you like to do that.
Absolutely. First of all, the stadium looks amazing out there. It looks like the Death Star. So we can certainly take that topic offline. I could talk for days about it. But Randy, the first question that we always love to ask our guests is, how did you get into HR and what is your background? Because very rarely, as I've seen over the past few weeks with school starting up, do kids have on those little boards that says, when I want to grow up, I want to be an HR.
That never happens. Never happens, Devin. And I'm one of those people that fell into it as well. While I was going to college and finishing up, I decided I should get a full-time job that last part of my senior year. And I started working for hotels at that time. That was in Scottsdale, Arizona. So in the Hyatt Regency Scottsdale was one of those brand new resorts that opened up. I thought that could be fun. I'll go do that. So I started my career off with Hyatt and worked in the operational area for a few years. And really, it was all about a general manager at a property and an HR director at a property pulling me aside for breakfast one morning and saying, hey, we see what you do with your team and how you like to develop people, and have you ever thought about human resources? And that's really how it happened for me. So I spent about 27 years, and that really sounds like a long time, 27 years with in progressive type HR roles, so mostly generalist roles, so kind of watching over the entire pieces of HR. The last 10 years with Hyatt, I was up at their corporate office in Chicago, overseeing talent for the Americas region and talent management as well. So I spent a lot of time with Hyatt, worked at 8 different properties across 5 different states. So I had a lot of different experiences. Left Hyatt when a very good friend of mine who had left a couple years before me had actually moved to work with a company in Arizona. Name of that company is Republic Services. They do waste and recycling. They're trying to build up their talent acquisition function, and he called me. He knew I was from Arizona to begin with. Said, "Hey, what do you think about coming out here and trying to build up that function for us?" So I did that for 4 years, which was a great experience, and obviously it's something very different than the hospitality world. But then this opportunity with MGM came about, and I think if you've grown up in our crazy type of business, I mean, you love it. You love the people, you love the guests, you love the kind of the diversity of the different offerings that we have. And when MGM called, I couldn't not take that opportunity. So now I'm here in Las Vegas overseeing talent acquisition.
Well, go Eagles is just all I want to interject here really quickly. But anyway, that's really interesting. And I love hearing about people's different journeys into HR. And I think yours is similar to other people that just kind of fall into it. But tell us a little bit more about MGM, because when we think about MGM, I mean, we think casinos, right? But are there other enterprises that you're involved with regarding hiring in MGM?
Involved in all aspects of hiring within the company and a little bit outside the company as well. So a little ago, MGM got involved in a joint venture with GC, with a online gaming company in the UK. It's now, this joint venture is called Roar. So obviously the online gaming is a big main part of the business. So we've been very involved with hiring with that group as well. But then there's a lot of things that I don't think people are just typically thinking about when you think about MGM, because I like you said, I think you think about the hotel pieces of business and you think about the gaming part of the business. But, you know, we have over 5 large entertainment. We have football. We help manage the T-Mobile Arena, which is where the Golden Knights play, near Park MGM. We have other very large venues that we manage. We have over 300 retail experiences. So, you know, for a lot of retail companies, that's a good size retail company all by itself. And then we have almost 500 food and beverage and club experiences. So MGM is one of the largest multi-concept non-chain operators for food and beverage. Like I said, each of these pieces could be a separate business of itself, and we involved in all of the hiring for all those parts of the business.
It sounds like you're hiring for the full gamut, everything from people that can assist with online gaming to you know, your food and beverage people and everyone in between. So things are off to a roaring start, I'm sure, in 2020. Then cue the dramatic music, enter the pandemic. Yeah. It's awful, but we have to, you know, that's a stage of grief, right? Is to have a little bit of humor. Can you provide a brief overview of what MGM's TA team has faced with since this pandemic and how talent communities have really helped that?
Yeah, so this might be the toughest to talk through, right? In terms of just everything we've dealt with over the last few months, like many people have. But I think, I'm sure most of your audience kind of understands how the pandemic has affected travel in general and definitely hospitality. I got friends with Hyatt that have been affected, friends with MGM. It's been a few months, right, for anybody that works in this particular space. And just to give you a little feel for this, I mean, as we started off the year in January and February, they're probably 2 of the busiest months from a business perspective that the business has had, and that's true from a talent acquisition perspective as well, in terms of a lot that we were doing. Yeah, I think at the end of February, we had about 1,200 open positions across the company, obviously thousands of job seekers attached to those different requisitions. So we kind of went from full speed, like everybody really focused on everything that's going on, like almost and all of a sudden stop. I don't know that any of us realized it was going to be what it turned out to be. You know, kind of, there was a week of, well, let's just see if we want to keep this position open right now, to really the point of we're closing down the business. I mean, we've got buildings that, I mean, honestly, were never designed to be locked up. I mean, I don't think there's locks on the doors of these casinos. They were not. It's quite the opposite, right? They're trying to get everybody in. To trying to figure completely close down these properties, furlough a lot of our colleagues, and honestly a lot of my team. You know, we went from having about 75 recruiting related roles across the country to about 6, right, when this whole thing happened. So just a crazy experience to go through. I mean, you keep hearing the same words when we talk through these different things. And just tough, just again, really difficult, especially, you know, someone that's leading a team, right? You never want to see those kind of things happen to your team, especially your team. You want to see that happen to anybody, but you definitely not those people that you're working with every day. So I'll tell you, fortunately, we were in the process of going live with the Phenom CRM platform. And we went live, I think it was the 3rd week of February. So just talking about timing, right? We had everything going, everything kind of ready to go. And then like middle of March is when we started dealing with all these kind of different things as well. So while we were trying to figure out the system and everything, we realized very quickly that, okay, people are coming to the career site because everyone's trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Like people that have already applied, what's going on with my application, people that might still be interested in working for MGM. And when you go from a career site with 1,100 job openings and all these different job categories to literally nothing. I mean, there was nothing. You had the big search box sitting there, but there was nothing to search for. We had to figure out how do we start to communicate out to these groups of people, and how do we allow people to show and express interest, right, when there's no application sitting out there. So we kind of quickly updated that career site. We moved the talent community features up to the very top of the page to give people that opportunity to go ahead and express interest. And we really used the talent community to start to communicate from that very beginning time period to today, right? We're still communicating with that group.
Yeah. So talk to us about, you know, how you've been engaging the talent community, because, you know, once they submit their information and they signal to you that they're interested and they're in the CRM, you know, what's that next step for MGM? And talk to us a little bit about that messaging and keeping those people engaged.
Yeah, so one of the things I'll share, so one of the very first things we did when we realized we were shutting down all these jobs is we wanted to get communication out to everybody that was in a stage of the recruiting process. So I think everyone up to kind of final interviews and offer, we utilized our communication tool. We utilized Phenom to send a note out to all candidates. Let them know what was happening, let them know what was going to be going on with their application, really let them know that things were on hold at the moment. But also, here's an opportunity to sign up for our talent community, stay updated about news and events with MGM, and get job alerts, right, around, you know, jobs that open up in the future as well. Obviously, candidates that we had further in the process, we were calling, right, to let them know what was going on as well. That was kind of the very first stage, but it also built up that talent community really quickly, right? Because we had a lot of people. I think we had probably about 18,000 candidates that were in some stage of our process that all of a sudden could join our talent community and start to get updates from us. So we've primarily been utilizing it for that purpose, for communication. We do put out a monthly newsletter, and in that newsletter, we will share some MGM information. And you can imagine in those early days of the pandemic, a lot of the information we were sharing around things that we were doing in our community and places that people could go, especially where we were partnering to get help from the community as well. So whether that was, you know, food drives or whatever that was happening in the community, we were sharing to the talent community. Because in the beginning, we still didn't have jobs to share, right? We didn't have any of that kind of information going on. So today we're still doing a lot of those things. We're sharing news about the company. We're sharing information now because we do have some jobs starting to open up. So we're sharing information about jobs. And I think the other thing we try to do too, and a little bit of this is based on the specific audience of the talent community, but we try to share obviously information that is specific to that group. So one of the communities we have, which I don't know if people always think of this as a community, but we just started working on this with you guys as well as our alumni community. So we still have a lot of employees that have not been able to return back to work. So that's another group that we're kind of staying connected with and using those community features for. But they obviously are looking for a little bit different information than someone that hasn't worked for us, that's a candidate that might be more interested in understanding, what's the day of a life at MGM like versus here's a current employee that's just trying to get back to work.
Yeah.
100%. And Randy, we did just get a comment from Ben Eubanks. Ben, thank you for the comment. For those of you just joining us, this is TXL. We are on live with Randy Goldberg, VP of Talent. I got to scroll up to my notes. VP of Talent Acquisition Strategy at MGM Resorts International. I apologize for that. Ben's question is, Randy, what resonates most with talent communities you're reaching out to? Is it info about culture at MGM, job openings, or potentially, what you had mentioned, the news around what you're doing in the community?
Yeah, I think, I think for, again, a little bit of this will depend on what the audience is that we're focusing on, on it at that point in time. So I'll, again, just give you an example, that alumni part of the community, we have had recently circumstances, we're actually creating new types of jobs, right? And that a lot of this is pandemic related. So one of those jobs is what we're calling a pool ambassador. So out at the pools, you've been at the Las Vegas pools, they get very busy, lots of things going on. And we obviously need to make sure that the safety protocols are definitely in place today more than ever. I mean, that is the first priority of the company. So we've created these new roles to kind of help with that. So one of the things we'll do when something like that happens with this alumni community is we'll share with that community first, right? Because the goal again is, you can't come back to what your previous job was. Here's another opportunity that we want to share with you. So for them, I think that's probably the very first priority. For candidates, I really think they're mostly trying to understand. I mean, they've already expressed interest in the company, so you already know that's a pretty warm lead for us. But I think they really seem to appreciate any stories from employees, testimonials, kind of day in the life in a certain role. Those types of things seem to resonate the best.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think also, it's leading into the next question that I have, which you kind of touched on, which is you're building up a base of people that are kind of already interested in your organization, in addition to, reaching out to those alumni. So I think, what do you feel like is the most important part of building a talent community, whether you're in a hiring boom or a hiring freeze? What makes it so important?
Yeah, I mean, these, like we said, these are people that have really made an effort to show interest, right? So in our talent community, sometimes these are people that have already applied, like I just mentioned to you, that people that were in process that want to stay in touch. Sometimes they're people that have come in that just the job they're looking at for at the moment just isn't available, so they want to stay in touch as well. So you've got all these different people looking for slightly different pieces of information. But for any recruiter, right, knowing that someone has an interest in the company, and typically it is the culture, that should really be the first place that we're going, right? It's got to be the very first place. And we obviously see what's nice about some of the tools we have today is it's very easy to see who is engaged and kind of who isn't quite as engaged, and easy to see if someone has come in through the talent community. So the candidate experience is super important to me. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we've got it down pat, but we all know the struggles around the candidate experience, especially when you've got a lot of high volume type of roles that you're trying to manage. But the talent community, I think, can really help with that too, right? Because on the very front end, even if they've already applied, you're staying in contact with those employees. You're making, or with those candidates. If they're alumni, they're the ex-employees. But those are all things I think that helps the brand, helps your employer brand. In Las Vegas, we've got about 60,000 employees. We want to make sure that they're all feeling good, alumni, candidates, current employees, about the company, because they're probably doing business with us every day. So these tools allow us to stay connected, to allow an opportunity to reach back out to us if there's something that they actually need, and obviously share just whatever the latest happenings are with MGM.
So, Randy, you kind of touched on it there when you mentioned engagement, but we got a comment from Karen, who had asked a great question, according to me and Ben, who also commented in there. The question was, what are the measures of success that you track for your talent community at MGM?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that are built into the platform that we use, which is, again, that's the Phenom platform, that allow us to track all those different things. So just at the very beginning, like when we're painting out to the community, we have all of the kind of, I guess, traditional marketing tools that you would see out there. Like we know, how many people did this go out to. We know how many people opened up the actual email. We know how many people clicked on different aspects of that campaign. And ultimately, if we have apply links, we know how many people end up applying. We can even see if someone started to look at the job but didn't end up applying, right? And these are all tools that we use to measure the engagement and really how well did we target that particular, communication? Because I think that's really the key to the whole thing. People are getting a lot of email, a lot of communication that doesn't really resonate with them. Just like all the email we all receive, right? Most of the email we receive, we're just trashing, right? So if you're not making sure that's very personalized and targeted, it's just not going to work, right? And this is really all about engagement. The other thing I'm just thinking on the top of my head is oftentimes you see email communications where it actually will state on the email, right? Do not reply, right? There is no reply address, right? The reply address that doesn't work, which from an engagement standpoint, this does not make any sense to me, right? So one of the things we definitely try to do is whenever we're sending information out, we actually give them a valid email address. If you've got questions, if there's things you want to talk about, here's how you can actually connect with us.
I always ask myself, where do those emails go if you're replying to them? Is it some dark hole in the corner of the web? They have to go somewhere. But the next question that I have is also a comment, and it comes from Tracy. Can you give advice on the best way to structure your talent communities? Is it by discipline, rooms, engineering, housekeeping, or by roles, or perhaps others?
Yeah, I think you have to do a little bit of all of those things. I talked about the alumni piece. So in our community, so we use the tagging and the CRM quite a bit. So we're able to create groups and lists based on those particular tags. So we have the alumni piece of the group. We've got kind of more hourly, I'd say high volume tags as well. We do a lot in that particular group. We've got a segment of the community that's kind of more technical, like more on the IT side. So we really try to almost by kind of persona. So we kind of have these kind of different groups and personas set up so that when we send out this communication, like I said, I should be feeling much more personalized. We're not sending out information to an IT person about a lifeguard opening, right? That just doesn't make any sense. And we don't want to keep it that general. So we really try to break it up into some smaller groups. Sometimes we will do some overall communication. That's just kind of overall company communication that will should resonate with everybody. But most of it is pretty targeted to these kind of job grouping categories.
Yeah, so that totally makes sense. And that kind of, again, leads into another question that I have around engaging the talent community and some recommendations for engaging them. So, categorizing, I think, is one really important piece of it for messaging, right? And then, what are some other ways that you engage with the talent community in that way?
Yeah, so there's in fact, there's a couple things that are relatively new that we're about to start this month. So we'll see how well they go. But again, thinking about that, most of the talent community are people that have not worked with us yet or expressed interest. We're trying to figure out how to kind of drive more specific information about the work experience and maybe some things that MGM is trying to do that might even provide additional interest, right, in those particular roles. So this month, we're going to be scheduling 2 virtual events, right? So we're going to utilize the Phenom system to have people register for the event, explain what the events are about, who's going to be speaking at the event. And right now, everything's obviously virtual. And I'm sure there'll be a day that we'll get people together for some of these events as well. But we wanted to try to provide something different. Like I really think if we're talking about technology roles, hearing from, our head of technology around what MGM is doing with online gaming and BetMGM might be something interesting, right, for that particular group to hear about. We might do something also just around kind of some of the unique benefits that MGM has, right? While we have the usual, right, health, 401k, all those types of benefits, what are some unique benefits that MGM offers, just to share that in a virtual way with that group as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how those types of things work. But again, I think anything you can share that, and just thinking about what are your candidates most interested in, right? And sometimes it's not even about your company, right? Sometimes it's just that, hey, like, we're all interviewing virtually, we're all doing this type of thing today. Can I share some hints with this group around how do you do a virtual interview like this? Like, what are some things you need to think about? Like, you probably shouldn't have a mirror in back of you when you're doing an interview, right? But just sharing those types of things with that group, because I think people really do appreciate that. And it's just another aspect of you're trying to help them, and maybe not even just specifically to your company, but it still helps your brand overall.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And Jen on cue comes in with a question surrounding SMS to communicate to your talent community, or is email still the preferred method? So have you toyed around with SMS, or is email still kind of the safest way?
So we have, so far, we've only used email. We are this close. In fact, we just turned on that functionality in Phenom so we could start using SMS. We're really trying to think through exactly how we want to use it. Because again, I think sometimes has to do with the audience a little bit, right? Just some groups, everybody's heard this too. I have some younger adults that, I look at their iPhone, there's like 6,000 unread email messages on their phone. They will never see an email if I send it to them. Won't matter how good the content. So I know for a lot of our groups, we're going to have to include SMS. And again, for other aspects of recruiting and communication, we know the open rate is much better. We do use text messaging and other facets of what we do in recruiting, but I think applying it to these kind of campaigns and to the talent community is going to be a huge benefit to us. I'm just looking forward to kind of getting it started and seeing how it works. Like any text messaging campaign, we're working with our legal team. There's a lot of just making sure the opt-in process is correct, the ability to opt out is correct. I think everybody knows you got to make sure you're really dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and make sure you've got that in a really good place.
It's something about text message notifications that doesn't drive me up a wall. Like it does. I have to read those text messages versus email. I'm one of those people with 6,000 emails, but if I get a text, even from the Census Bureau, an election campaign, something like that, insurance offers, I have to remove that. So I think that SMS is certainly something that is taking to the forefront. Jonathan chimes in and says that his unread inbox is at 100,093 and 381 on my phone. That number's so big, I just messed it up trying to read it.
I need to go meditate after reading that. That was very upsetting.
It just makes me nervous. Makes me very nervous. But yeah. It's like I think when you're talking about text messaging, just like email, though, you really got to make sure, and this is what we're trying to figure out, that it is very targeted. I don't want to start sending people text messages that just really don't are not specific to that individual, right? You've got to really make sure it's very personal. I think even more so when it comes to a text message that's very specific to that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, when you talk about portraying MGM's culture and really diving into that, obviously it's transformed from what it was months ago. Are members of the MGM community really reacting positively to you sending out culture videos or sending out what a day in the life looks like now in this COVID era where we may not all be in the office sitting next to each other or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling that. I mean, not only do we see it in the numbers in terms of everything I'm just talking about, how we measure, engagement with our different campaigns in the talent community. It's amazing. I mean, there's like the open rate for our talent community, like on email, is about 80%, which I think for most email campaign perspectives is incredibly strong, right? So people
Clearly you didn't email Jonathan.
No. And we have very few, people have the ability to opt out of these campaigns also, right? And we have a very small amount of people that end up opting out. So two other things that we really strongly, take a look at to make sure that we're messaging in the right way. And I just lost track of what you just said.
I'm sorry. No, it was just around the culture videos and how the culture has changed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you, we hear from candidates, and I think part of it too is what I was talking about when we give these email campaigns, we give people the opportunity to respond and ask questions. Now, I will tell you, it takes a little bit of time, right? Because we do get a lot of responses, right? We do. People have a question about a job, or they applied for this role like 2 days ago. Like, do we know what's going on with their status? So there is an investment to doing what I just talked about. But it is amazing how appreciative people are of the smallest response. That's probably because from a TA perspective, the bar is set unbelievably low, right? People don't usually hear anything at all. And just hearing, hey, we did get your application, right? We see that it was there 2 days ago. We'll have it posted for about another week, and then we'll start reviewing the candidates and follow up with you. The things like that, it's just amazing. You'll get response like, hey, thanks so much. That's what they'll say. Thanks for responding, right? They are not used to seeing things like that. So again, I think from an employer brand, and again, these are things I was talking about that we're doing with our alumni group. So, I think it's definitely resonating, and I think our alumni know, right, that while they may not be back to work today, we're doing everything we can as we move forward to give them the first opportunity to come back to work, and then make sure we're exposing them to other job opportunities that they may also be interested in. Obviously, all of that is only positive, right? It's hard to look at any of that in any kind of negative way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, you touched on a little bit about, the content itself, how important the culture videos and just showcasing, what it's like to work for MGM, but then also talking a lot about, engaging the talent community in a way that's meaningful to them. So, you mentioned SMS and the fact that that's something that you're going to have to take advantage of, right? Because that's kind of the way that technology and society is going. So what other elements do you think will define the success of talent communities in the future?
Yeah, so I look at two things. What are we doing to encourage people to be a part of the talent community, right? Because I think there's lots of opportunities around that. I am guessing most of us, at least what I used to do as well too, it was just about having a link on your career site somewhere that said join our talent community. But based on this whole conversation, it's so much more than that. It's more than just someone hitting that link and subscribing, right? You've got to be engaged. You've got to be communicating out to them. And you got to be looking for other ways to remind them that the talent community exists, right? So I know we have other campaigns, like automatic campaigns set up in the system. So, we have people that come in that sometimes are leads, right? People that came into the system but did not start to apply for a job, but the system sees that. We have people that started to apply for a job and maybe didn't finish applying for a job, so partial applicants as well. Then obviously we have applicants, and in all three of those, we send out a communication after they've interacted with us, right, to let them know, hey, we saw that you were looking at some jobs. Here's an opportunity to join our talent community and continue to get additional information from us and job updates. And we do that for kind of all three of those groups, right, just to remind them, here's a way to stay updated with us and stay connected with us. And that kind of by itself is, I think it's been a huge reason why we've had the community growth that we have. It's just a reminder, right? And you just add it to the email communication that probably already exists in your ATS or in your CRM. Just remind them, right? Here's a way to stay connected with us. And then I think the last thing, just over and over again today, I think the more we can get better at personalizing the message, right? So the more you understand about that potential candidate, right? The more you understand that they've applied to these 3 or 4 other jobs, right? Or they got this far in your application process. or that they've interacted with your chatbot, right, and asked these particular questions, the more you can customize and personalize it, obviously, right, the more relevant that is to that candidate, and I think the better engagement you're going to end up getting. And again, these are things we are still working on. I don't want to make it sound like we've got this all down pat, but I think we're fortunate to have the tools to be able to do that. Now it's kind of up to us to fully leverage all those tools.
I couldn't agree more. Our entire world revolves around personalization, whether it be Netflix, Spotify, or Amazon suggesting that I buy something that I absolutely do not need. So personalization is certainly the key. And Karen chimes in with another quick question. Are executive branding and employee spotlighting a part of your talent community strategy?
Yeah, so that executive level leadership piece, that's kind of where we're starting to infuse those virtual events. That's kind of our first step into that process, because I think people love hearing from leaders. People love hearing about kind of the culture they're trying to create, and play a little bit of kind of the strategy moving forward. Again, if you're working for a hospitality company and you're in the service side, you want to understand what is that company really trying to accomplish service, and having senior leadership talk through that and what we're trying to do, I think resonates in a very positive way. And I think it helps with attracting candidates, right? Because it's hard to get really good information about a company unless you truly know somebody in that company. I know there's all the Glassdoor sites and all those kind of things, and I think everyone in this group understands the challenges around that information, right? That sits out there. Some of it's great, some of it isn't as great. I think when you get a leader out there really showing themselves, expressing what they're really trying to make happen, I think that probably is more powerful than just about anything else that we could be focusing on. So while we're just getting started with it, maybe at some time in the future, I can kind of fill you guys in on how that ends up working for us.
We would love that for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we're pretty much up to wrapping this up. So we'd love to just understand, and we know you don't have it all figured out yet, but you're definitely thinking towards what you want to achieve with all of this, and getting that ball rolling. So for somebody who's looking to revamp or start a talent community, what's one piece of advice that you wish you had when you kind of started this whole process?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was thinking about, I should answer this in a way that talks about you should put a full strategy together, right? Get the right people in your company involved, right? Get your marketing team involved. Get some of your leaders involved. Probably still is the right answer, right? It's the right way to answer it. But I was just thinking about what we started. And some of it just getting started, right? I had a leader at Hyatt, after the CEO of Hyatt, that used to say 0.5 is greater than 1 point, right? Which I know mathematically doesn't have, but it's just getting to 0.5 sometimes more difficult than trying to make it perfect. So I think what I would say is just get started. I would say make sure that you've got a truly good avenue for open communication, right? Don't be one of those people that selects the option in the campaign that says do not respond, right? That's the key to this whole thing, the communication pieces of it. And just get started, right? Because you're going to start to see what actually resonates. You're going to start to figure out, oh, here's another way we can utilize this particular tool. And I think that's the most important part. Just get started in the process.
Yeah,
I think truer words have never been spoken. It reminds me of learning how to shoot a basketball or something like that. You just got to pick up and go out to the park. You can't do it in a bubble, right? So Randy, before we let you go and get back to your busy day, I wanted to see any parting shots. I know you offered some advice, but anything you'd like to promote or anything you'd like to throw out before we sign off?
Yeah, it's the same thing I always tell like my team and everyone I always work with. You've got to constantly be thinking about put yourself in the characters. And I know this is unbelievable, obvious to make, but I know sometimes in day to day and just the volume of things that we're dealing with, sometimes we're putting things together that maybe make it easier for us, might make it a little bit easier for us, but you don't end up with the that you really want to be providing. I know with us, we are we call ourselves an entertainment company. And if we're going to try to emulate what we're doing with our guests, we've got to really provide a really good experience to our candidates. So remember that, right? Go through your systems, like make sure you're receiving all the communications that you're actually sending out, and put yourself in that candidate mindset. Make sure, is this what I would want to be receiving? Is this how I would want to be able to respond? And you'll probably end up in a good place.
Awesome. Well, Randy, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't, but for the next HR conference that you attend in Las Vegas, be sure to stay at an MGM hotel. Go gamble. Go see Randy. Say hello.
Yeah.
They seem to always be there, so you now know him from the TXL show. Randy, thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy.
Natalie, that was fun. Randy was a wealth of information on talent communities. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I love the parting message. Put yourself in the candidate's shoes. I think that's what everybody's striving for, right? Is this candidate experience, and sometimes the candidate experience is exactly what gets lost because we're forgetting to put ourselves in those shoes. So I really love that advice, and I think it's a really good way to kind of wrap this up and continue the conversation on to HR technology.
Exactly. No more do not reply emails. That's a big no-no, right?
Yes.
But thanks again, Natalie. I'll see you next week.
All right.